This is the editor here to say spoilers. Hello, I'm Shell Stacia and welcome back to my YouTube channel, the place where I talk in ASMR tone so as not to disturb my roommates. Today we are discussing Infinity Train, my favorite TV series of all times, which is maybe not saying much since I haven't seen all that much TV. Every book is glorious, the plot is great, the characters, I love them. The episodes, brilliant. But which episode is the most brilliant? Please remember, there is no such thing as opinion, there is only objective fact, and if you disagree with me, you're wrong. Let's begin. Number 40, The Pig Baby Car. I really like Season 4. Ryan and Mingi are great characters, their chemistry is great, and I hate this episode a little bit. I like it, but I also hate it, because Pig Baby and whoever his mom is are the most annoying denizens we've seen on the train. The episode fits well into Mingi and Ryan's arc, especially with Ryan realizing that he has to slow down sometimes, but this message is fairly obvious and they could have done that with more likable side characters. Number 39, The Iceberg Car. This episode really sets up fairly well Kez's character and Ryan and Mingi's character and the problems they all have with each other, but again, it suffers from unlikable side characters in forms of the aliens. One user on Tumblr pointed out that the dial switch is a good metaphor for looking to the past versus looking to the future and how Mingi and Ryan balance each other out and the red-blue color scheme of it all. And that definitely made me appreciate the episode a lot more, but all in all, the message was obvious and the side characters weren't all that likable, even if I adore Kez's introduction. 38 is The Parasite Car. I like The Parasite Car well enough. It shows a lot of MT/Lake's character and how she wants to be treated and how she wants to treat other people, as in seeing them as people and not as something to control or something that's destined to never have control. So that aspect of this episode is really good. The unfortunate thing is I don't like Perry at all, which I realize is the point. You're not supposed to like Perry. But there's so many likable denizens on the train that episodes like this and the Iceberg Car and the Pig Baby Car, where you have unlikable denizens, it just makes them kind of worse. Number 37 is the Old West Car. In a similar vein from the previous ones, this car's denizens aren't all that likable. It's just the Old West. There's nothing clever done with the Old West, it's just the Old West. One trap Infinity Train needs to avoid falling in is just making each episode a different stereotypical, movie almost. I think that this episode falls into that trap somewhat. Number 36 is the Canyon of the Golden Winged Snakes Car. This is the one where Amelia chases Grace, Simon, and Hazel through the car, and then that's most of the episode, actually. I like this episode. It has a lot of tension, but it is mostly just a chase scene. I even just rewatched it 20 minutes ago, and I still don't remember what happens very much other than they run away from Amelia. Number 35 is The Beach Car. The Beach Car is the episode that introduces us to the cat and Randall. And while I like Randall and the cat, I don't like them that much. The moral of this episode is pretty obvious as well. It's stick with your friends. Don't literally sell your friends to a salesperson. So yeah, we know Tulip isn't gonna give up 1-1. We know what's gonna happen. We know the cat's not a great person. Randall's cool, but not a lot happens, and what does happen is fairly predictable. Number 34 is The Grid Car, episode 1. This is the one where Tulip gets on the train, and at some point she decides to try and get off the train, and she experiences the wasteland and the Gomes for the first time. This is a really good introduction to the episode. It really gets in how Tulip gets on the train, almost the horror aspect of the train, that you're stuck there in the middle of nowhere and you can't get off. And so I think this episode does a really good job at setting up the premise of the show. And the scene where Tulip takes off her glove for the first time and sees her number, that's a great scene. Number 33 is The Unfinished Car. The unfinished car has a really good climax where Tulip tells 1-1 that he does not have to destroy this car, that sometimes things being broken can just be broken and you don't have to necessarily fix everything, which fits in very well with Tulip's own arc with realizing that she can't and shouldn't try to fix her parents' marriage. The reason why this episode isn't higher on the list is because most of the episode is just watching Tulip and 1-1 try to fix this place, sopping up grape jelly or building a wall. So while the message of this episode is really good, a majority of it is really boring, even though I really enjoy seeing Atticus find more royalty to converse with. Number 32 is the Black Market Car. This is the first episode in Book 2, and it does a really good job of reintroducing us to MT/Lake and introducing Jesse and Alan Dracula. Right off the bat, this episode's really good for two reasons. It makes us consider MT as her own character apart from Lake, and it gets us to like Jesse very quickly. And this is also something that the grid car does very well, where you like Tulip very fast. It's something that the musical car and the twin tapes does well as well. Every season of Infinity Train does a really good job at introducing our characters and getting us to like them very quickly. Even characters like MT/Lake, where we've only seen her as a reflection of Tulip, it gets us very fast to see her as her own character, to the point of I don't even associate her with Tulip very much by season 2. I'm generally fairly surprised that the same voice actor voices both of the characters, because both of the characters act in such different ways. Number 31 is the Mega Maze car. This is the car where Kez takes Mingy and Ryan to her home/roommate, which is Morgan, the castle, and Mingy and Ryan have to find their way through this maze with all of the people that Kez is angered following after them. The people Kez is made angry following after them is definitely the more boring part of the episode, because the interesting bit is Ryan and Mingy working through some of their issues, with Mingy admitting that he does not actually trust Ryan and that the events of the previous episode have affected him a lot. And with Ryan admitting that he doesn't actually feel as confident or as self-assured as Mingy thinks he does. The emotional beats of this episode are really great. Again, the reason why this isn't higher is because of the rather unlikable people who are chasing Kez for the entire episode. Number 30 is the Crystal Car. I love the Crystal Car. I know it's 30 out of 40, but I cannot express to you how much I love this series and how much I love this episode in particular. The Crystal Car is the one where Tulip has to sing a song that is emotional to get out of the car. She tries all of these rip-off songs from Titanic or a rip-off Justin Bieber song, and eventually realizes that the song that she's supposed to sing is the song that makes her emotional, a song that she sang in the car with her parents on road trips, which I did not realize was an actual song until a few months ago when I heard it on my shift. What makes this episode so likable to me is just seeing Tulip, Atticus, and this crystal man interact. When Tulip starts singing the song, which is Word Up by Cameo, she squats down to Atticus's level so that she can dance with Atticus and 1-1. When Tulip decides that she needs to make a ladder to try and get out of it, Atticus sits down and explains the history of a corgi legend to the Crystal Man, because neither of them can help Tulip with having no thumbs. The fact that Tulip won an award titled the Best Hypothetically Proven Hypothesis is brilliant and also so very Tulip. I just adore this episode. So now on to the 29 I like more than it. On this list, you'll notice that I tend to like episodes with characters I like interacting in ways I like. And one of the best episodes for this is the Lucky Cat Car, which is where MT and Jesse run around trying to win enough points to exit the train, wherein they realize that the person who does win, who's Grace, just lets in other kids to destroy it. Now, the great part of this episode is just seeing MT and Jesse run around and have a good time. The absolute best part is when Jesse admits to MT that he would like her to leave the train with him. Seeing MT's reaction to this is glorious. We've known all along that Jesse cares about MT, but seeing just how much he cares about her, seeing just how much she cares about him in return, they're just so precious. I love them. Number 28 is the Chrome car, which is where MT/Lake is first introduced as being Tulip's reflection. I really like this episode. MT confronting Tulip about how she doesn't actually look for help. She doesn't try and solve her problems. She just holes away in her room is great. Tulip was already really likable, but Tulip becomes really likable in this episode where after MT tries to trap her, Tulip still tries to help her. The way that Tulip is able to get MT out using the mirror from her pocket knife is creative, and I just really enjoyed this episode. Plus, Atticus and the blanket. Atticus barking at his own reflection. I love Atticus so much. This episode is perfect. Number 27 is the map car. As much as I don't like Marcel, he's meant to be annoying, he is annoying. This episode is really great. It comes in after MT and Jesse have agreed to get along, and now MT is trying to help Jesse lower his number. And she's doing this not entirely knowing what she's doing. She knows what works for Tulip, but she doesn't know what works for Jesse. And initially she feels confident because his number is only 32, but it was 31 when he got on, so maybe he isn't doing so hot. When they get on to the raft and Jesse tells her about his swim team and how he's giving up things he wants for other people and his number goes down, that scene was really good because we as an audience start to understand why Jesse is on the train, and now we get to look forward to how he gets off the train and more specifically what happens with MT with the Flex chasing after her, as we've seen again in this episode. Number 26 is the family tree car. The family tree car also has some annoying denizens on it, but it has MT and Jesse working together for the first time for the sake of their deer, and then at the end they agree to get along. The parts in the middle are great. Seeing Jesse try to people please all of these people, seeing MT start out not caring for Jesse at all but gradually coming to be able to work with him, seeing them use fancy old-timey language to try and prove that they can get along. It's great. I love this episode. Number 25 is the Color Clock Car, which is the episode where Simon, Grace, Hazel, and Tuba end up in this car that changes objects and colors when a clock turns around. I did not explain that well. Obviously, what everyone remembers from this episode is the ending where Simon kills Tuba, but the parts leading up to that are really great. We find out about Tuba's children. We see Simon and Tuba work together. An earlier scene shows Simon helping Tuba up by their hands, and the same way that Simon later drops Tuba to her death by their hands. The greatness of this episode is that we don't know whether Simon or Grace can be redeemed. Simon spends the whole episode getting along with Tuba, but obviously still doesn't see her as a person because he kills her at the end. Grace spends the whole episode explaining to Hazel why Tuba isn't a person and why gnolls in general aren't people. An interesting thing in season 3 is that a lot of people really like Grace but really dislike Simon because of the choices they make, but Simon and Grace are similar in the sense that I think they would make the same choices if they were in each other's shoes. Grace allows herself to care more for Hazel as the season progresses, but Simon doesn't, and a lot of Simon's belief system actually comes from Grace, which is interesting because she's almost growing out of the belief system that she imprinted onto him. Number 24 is the party car. The party car is where Mingy and Ryan get into the party from the last episode, and they're supposed to play a song, but Mingy runs off because he's not ready, and Ryan chases after them, and they have a jam session in the bathroom. This also features a scene of Amelia's takeover of the car, which was really great, but the highlight of this episode is just seeing Mingy and Ryan talk about their fears and hopes in the bathtub in the bathroom. They have a really interesting conversation on what it means to become something that you've never seen before, in the form of like Asian people in a rock band, which, considering it's the 80s, but even today, you don't see as often. And then the scene where Ryan takes off his bandana and shows Mingy that this is the shirt you gave me, I still care. That is really great too. Number 23 is the heiho wokar. The heiho wokar has the most dull setting out of any of the cars on the train, arguably even the toad car. The heiho wokar mostly consists of Grace and Simon figure out that Amelia was the conductor who saved Grace that one time. Simon figures out that Hazel is a denizen. Grace lies about Hazel being a denizen. Simon views Grace's memories and finds out that Grace was deliberately lying to him. This is a really good episode emotionally, as it sets up a lot of Simon's almost breaking point, and it sets up the fact that while Grace is still improving, still learning how to care more about people, she's still not all there. She's still not ready to tell Simon the truth, to tell Simon that her mind has changed. She's still lying to Simon. She's still hurting denizens. Number 22 is the new Apex. This is the finale of book 3, wherein Simon and Grace fight. Grace saves Simon's life. Simon tries to kill Grace, and Simon ends up devoured by the golems. Grace takes over the Apex and transforms it into a group that's trying to get their numbers down, and the season ends with a lot of people's numbers dropping. Grace's number drops quite a lot, but she's still probably not going to get off the train anytime soon. This is a really great conclusion to book 3. I love Simon, I love Grace, and they definitely did the ending great. As much as I love Simon, that dude, his death was coming, and they handled it really well. You get this real sense that the Apex really are this group of kids that's been led astray by these 2 teenagers who've almost been leading each other astray as well. Number 21 is the Toad Car, which is where Jesse finds out that MT is a criminal, and they end up in this Toad Car where Jesse is mad that MT has lied to him. Jesse watches this video on his phone that shows that he allowed some of his friends to bully his brother because he was not confident enough to stand up to them for his brother. And MT tells Jesse that his friends are bad. MT says that she can't even trust someone who would betray her own brother. This episode's really good because you finally get the pieces put together of why Jesse is on the train. It has a lot of suspense in the fact that we don't know if Jesse will believe the flex or not. And the scene where MT explains what's really going on, that she is a reflection, and Jesse and her try to kick the Toad together is really great as well. Number 20 is the Astro Q car. After the previous episode, which is the Pig Baby car, Mingi and Ryan think that the number is only Ryan's, and so Mingi tries very patronizingly to help him get the number down, not realizing that being this patronizing is not helping Ryan at all. Ryan understandably gets frustrated and tries to get into this party that has this ridiculously long line a myriad of ways, while Mingi would rather just wait in line. The end of the episode is Mingi realizing that all of the people waiting in line are actually dead, and that sometimes you can mess up by standing still, and the number goes down and they realize that it's actually both of their numbers. And then they pretend to be the band and get into the party car. This episode's really good. The one scene where Mingi pulls the leaves off of the helmet of one of the dead people and sees his own reflection back in it, where it's like those people were waiting forever and never got in, and he could be that person too. That scene was really well done. They do a really good job of showcasing Mingi and Ryan's emotions and making them understandable. We understand why Mingi's annoyed, why Ryan can't just stand where the glowing sign tells them to, and we understand why Ryan is annoyed that Mingi can't see that that is not working. They also do a very careful job to make Mingi, while he's being patronizing and fairly annoying in this episode, they still make him likable. He asks at one point, "Does guitar playing give you muscles?" And that's pretty hilarious. Overall, it's a really good episode that starts getting into like the core of who these characters are. Number 19 is the tape car. This is the penultimate car of book 2, wherein MT goes to try and get a number, and she realizes how the numbers are made, which is they make tapes out of people's memories, and then those memories give people numbers based on how big of a problem they need to fulfill. This episode is really good in the sense that it sets up suspense for the climax of this book, and it explains a lot of how the train works. I would say that a downside of this episode is that you are just watching like things happen for most of it. There's not a lot of character emotion until the very end, where MT realizes she can't get a number, and she just gets mad that even the train itself won't recognize her as a person. 18 is the art gallery car, another episode with a great ending, which is where Ryan and Mingi are in this art gallery that is actually a bit of a monster that is making them turn against each other. They end up venting a lot of their frustrations both to each other and to Kez, who doesn't let the monster get to her. Eventually, Ryan figures his way out of the car, but Mingi is left behind unintentionally. Ryan suggests that he's not going to leave Mingi behind, and that's enough to drop his number to 0, but when he does start to consider leaving Mingi behind, his number goes back up again, and Mingi eventually makes his way out of the car, but thinks that Ryan has left him to die. The ending of this is a bit haunting because we know that Ryan could have left and almost did leave, so Mingi's anger and utter devastation that he feels is not totally misplaced. Number 17 is the musical car. This is the opening episode to book 3, and it shows the Apex going in and destroying this musical car, and then going in and destroying the unfinished car, which is now even more unfinished, until Grace and Simon are eventually separated from the group. The opening sequence of this book is amazing. It's this really cheery music that is actually a song Jessie mentioned in the second book, put 2 images of the Apex just utterly destroying things, and I love it. It's a good reintroduction to the Apex and Grace and Simon, and it shows just exactly how manipulative of a person Grace is, that she accepts gifts from these kids and then immediately throws them out. She says she's going to read Simon's book and then doesn't, and altogether it shows a really great starting point for both Grace and Simon and the journeys they're going to take on this season. Number 16 is the corgi car, which I like for totally unbiased reasons that have nothing to do with my absolute adoration of Atticus. But the corgi car is really a great episode. There's this one sequence in there where Atticus, Tulip, and 1-1 are just climbing this hill and exploring this car for about a whole minute there. And it's really brilliant because before this episode, we've only seen the grid car and the beach car, which have been relatively small cars. It's only in the sequence that you start to begin to realize how spacious these train cars can really get. In addition, the fact that there's this one really ugly dog, Atticus says, but really it's a beautiful dog, it's just a golden retriever, I think, is a good metaphor for Tulip's journey and how what she perceives to be reality isn't necessarily reality. And all of the jokes with Atticus are great. Him not being able to exit the door on the first try, Tulip carrying Atticus over the water, all of it's glorious. Number 15 is the engine, which is the final episode of book 1, wherein Tulip, having seen Atticus die, decides to go to the engine to see if he can be fixed. And she meets Amelia, who she has seen the past tape for before, so she knows Amelia's story, but she's still angry at what Amelia has done since Ulrich died, and she is ready to fight to get Atticus back. Seeing Amelia's grief in this episode is really good. How Tulip mirrors that almost, but not quite, is beautiful. The fight scenes are great. Seeing Atticus come back is great. One thing I really like in this episode is where Tulip tells Amelia, "You've lost someone you care about. I don't really know how that feels." Because a lot of times TV series do this thing where they introduce one character to another character who's gone through something similar so that they can help each other through their problems, or they pretend that there's a false equivalency between my issue and your issue. They don't do that here. They recognize that having your parents divorce is not the same thing as losing the love of your life, and Tulip recognizes that as well, and Tulip says, "Even though I don't know what you're going through, I don't know what you're experiencing, I still hope for the best for you, and I still am trying to understand where you're coming from." I really enjoyed that, and the ending is great, and Tulip not having a reflection is great, and really good setup for book 2, and it's a really great ending to book 1. Number 14 is the Train to Nowhere, which is the final episode in book 4, where all of the people chasing Kez catch up to them. Morgan, the castle, realizes that she can just let all of these people in and let them hurt Ryan and Mingi for her. And so she does that. Kez apologizes to all of the people chasing her. They all apologize to each other, and Ryan and Mingi apologize to each other. Mingi tells Ryan that, "You stuck with me, now you're stuck with me." That's enough for Mingi to get his exit, but Mingi decides that he's not going to leave without Ryan, and his exit stays. And then Ryan also gets his exit. This is a really good episode in the sense that it finally gets to the point of why Ryan and Mingi's numbers haven't been moving all season long, which is that as much as they've been working through their problems or bonding, their numbers finally go to 0 when they've decided that they are not going to leave the other person behind, that no matter what the problems are or what the solution is or how much they bond, they're going to stick together. they're going to stick together no matter what. And that's what gets their numbers to do 0. And also, I absolutely love the Train to Nowhere song at the end. I'm glad this season ended really happily. I know a lot of people say that Infinity Train is very tonally inconsistent, but that's kind of the point. If you have an infinite train with infinite cars that could be infinite things, an infinite number of people could get on the train with infinite possibilities for personalities, there are infinite possibilities. It totally makes sense that season 3 would be so dark and then season 4 would be so light, because with infinite possibilities, why wouldn't this happen? Number 13 is the jungle car, where Simon and Grace enter the jungle car and meet Hazel and Tuba. This sets up a really good conflict for season 3, with Hazel not having a number and Grace and Simon deciding to help her get to the apex to figure out her number. There's a really good scene in this episode of Grace and Simon just exploring the car, which is great because previously we haven't really liked those two characters that much, so just seeing these two characters interact with each other and the environment in a very likable way is very enjoyable, and it makes us sympathize with these characters more. I think the whole audience immediately falls in love with Hazel and Tuba. It's interesting seeing how Grace and Simon work together and almost against each other in order to manipulate this child into joining the apex. It's all together just really good setup for book 3. Number 12 is the past car, where we see Amelia's past and how she ended up on the train after having lost her fiance Ulrich. They get a lot of exposition in here done really well, with seeing how Ulrich and Amelia are friends from like grade school up through university and then becoming boyfriend and girlfriend at some point and then fiancés and planning on getting married, and then Ulrich dying and Amelia losing herself to grief. They explain it all really well and how short of a time they have. They get us to like Amelia and Ulrich really well. They get us to understand that Amelia is really smart, really quickly on. Altogether, they do a lot of exposition really well in this episode. Number 11 is Le Chat Chalet car. Simon, Grace, Tuba, and Hazel show up at the cat's bungalow in this snowy car. The episode opens with all 4 of them having a snowball fight, which is adorable and gets us to like these characters a whole lot more. When they get to the cat's house, we realize that Simon used to know the cat, that the cat abandoned him and hurt him. We see Grace and Simon comfort each other over the cat's betrayal for Simon and Grace's number going down, which legitimately scares her. These sequences are really good because we understand quickly how Simon came to be this way, and we understand that because Grace didn't have the introductory video that Jessie got, that she believes that the numbers going up is a good thing, and now she's legitimately terrified. This is a really good dissonance between what the audience knows and what the character knows, where the audience knows that Grace is actually doing well, but Grace is terrified, and we understand that. Number 10 is the mall car, where we are first introduced to the apex, Grace and Simon. But most importantly, Jesse gets his exit because he stands up for MT and Ellen Dracula. This episode is really good. Grace and Simon manipulating Jesse is great. MT's continuing struggle to be seen as human is great. And the utter devastation for both MT and Jesse as Jesse goes through the portal and they both realize that MT cannot follow after is absolutely devastating to the audience. A really great episode that sets up a really good back half of book 2. Number 9 is the ball pit car, which starts out with Tulip and Atticus reaffirming their friendship with each other, which I adore, and then goes on through a really fun sequence of Tulip just being a kid going through this playland area that you'd see at a restaurant or something, and 1-1 Atticus and the stuffed animal creature I can't remember the name of just cheering her on and being super excited about just doing these fun little kid things. And then the conductor shows up and threatens Tulip and kills Atticus, and we are left with just Tulip crying. The mood whiplash in this episode works perfectly because we understand Tulip's joy, we're so with her the whole way, and then it just turns to utter horror and dread, and that's beautiful as well. All of the tones in this episode are perfect, and how this play place goes from this fun wonderland to this horrifying trap is just glorious. Number 8 is the debutant ball car, wherein Grace, Simon, Tuba, and Hazel end up in this debutant ball car, and Simon decides to try and find a way out using force, but Hazel wants to follow the steps that are lined out, and Grace for the first time in the season, has to make a choice between Simon and Hazel, and she chooses Hazel. I will not lie, I mostly just like this episode because seeing Grace and Hazel and Tuba dance is utterly adorable, but there is a lot of good aspects to this episode. Simon trying to see the outside and realizing nothing is there is horrifying, and also seeing Grace realize that there is another way through the cars without destroying everything is great. Seeing Grace, Simon, Hazel, and Tuba all having a good time is glorious as always. Number 7 is the number car, which is the final episode in book 2. MT has just realized that she can't get a number from the number car and is now angry at the train. 1-1 shows up and wants her to stop being mad, and wants to demonstrate that she has helped Jesse, but when he does so, he realizes that Jesse is still on the train. They go find Jesse in the tape car, they watch his memories, see him get off the train, see him decide that he cannot leave MT behind, and when they wake Jesse up, they realize that his number is impossible. It keeps changing between various irrational numbers and things that just don't make sense, like an emoticon. And Jesse says that, of course, I have a problem. My friend is stuck on a train, and the problem is unsolvable because supposedly a denizen can't get off the train. Seeing Jesse and MT reunite is absolutely perfect. The fight between them all and the Flex is great. Seeing the duality of 1-1, wherein he almost tries to kill Lake because that would solve the problem, that would get him out of the loop, but Jesse tricking him back into the loop is great. MT coming up with a plan to reflect the numbers on their hands is great, and seeing 1-1 just agree to it is also great and shows just how much Tulip and also Amelia probably have changed 1-1. The ending where they're by the lake with Jesse's brother and Lake picks her name is perfect as well. Number 6 is the origami car, where we see Grace's memories of how she ended up on the train because she doesn't feel like she has enough attention from her parents, and Simon is also in her memories, and it gets really tense with Simon in there because he is now the villain of book 2. In the beginning of the episode, seeing Grace step around the origami creatures and Simon just step on them demonstrates how far they've come in this series, wherein Grace has changed, but Simon hasn't really. Simon has just become more of what he already was, which is very insecure. And the ending where Simon just leaves Grace seemingly for dead is also very intense as well. Number 5 is the Cat's Car, which is another episode where a character goes into their memories. This time it's Tulip. This episode I put higher than the origami car because I think it does the memory thing a little bit better. While I enjoy Simon being in there with Grace as a antagonistic force, the fact that the antagonistic force in Tulip's memories is just Tulip not remembering things correctly is great as well. Seeing her go through all these happy memories and wondering why things had to change, but then realizing that things had to change because they were bad and I was just misremembering things is just brilliantly done here. The fact that she pulls the cover over her dad, but her dad isn't there because she's just blocking that memory out, and she has to realize that, hey, I'm the one who's changing my memories. I'm the one who's making this divorce to seem like this horrible nightmare when it's just something that happens. So I think the memory thing is done really well in this episode. Number 4 is the Wasteland, which I maintain is the darkest episode in Infinity Train. Mace, I believe, and MT are stuck in the Wasteland because MT is trying to escape, but Mace, or the upper half of Mace, is attached to her via handcuffs. Most of this episode is just Mace taunting MT over her humanity and what she expects to happen if she does escape the train, which is really dark. Half of book 2 is about people just questioning MT's humanity and MT having to assert her personhood again and again and again. But this episode just takes it to a whole new level, with Mace just calling her existence into question at every turn, and Mace suggesting that they're both going to die and laughing about it. At the end, Mace feels that he is going to die no matter what and decides he wants to take MT with him. And MT kills Mace in self-defense, but when she kills him, her face looks so grim, like she knows she's killing a person. She believes him to be a person just as much as she is, but she's still killing him, which is almost darker than him trying to kill her, because he does not consider her to be a person, but she considers him to be a person and she's still killing him. At the end, MT decides that she is going to wait for a pod and get a number, and her determination is going to carry her through, and she's going to get off this train. And it is a brilliant ending. I absolutely adore the end of this episode, and it just sets up perfectly what is to come in book 2. Number 3 is the Twin Tapes, which is the first episode in book 4, wherein we see the background of Min-gi and Ryan's friendship and how they split up. And I don't think I need to tell anyone who's seen book 4, but the camera work in this episode is great. It splits apart when they go their separate ways, and it shows them doing similar things in different areas, neither being all that fulfilled. Ryan's playing crappy gigs, Min-gi's cleaning tables at a diner. At one point, Min-gi is playing on his synth, the same song that Ryan's playing on his guitar, which is really great. And when they come back together and they're standing at the door and Min-gi opens it, I believe a Tumblr user said, letting Ryan back into his life, it's just great. And then the ending of the episode where Amelia is there with One, except for he's just one now, where One tells Amelia that if they don't solve their problems they're gonna die, is just great. It sets up a lot of tension for the season, especially after last season when one of our characters did die. Will Ryan and Min-gi both make it? We don't know, and that's what keeps us watching. Number 2 is the Castle Car, which I absolutely adore. The music is perfect, realizing that this is Kez's home, and who Morgan is the castle, is great. This episode, more than any other, shows that denizens do have feelings. When Tulip leaves, Atticus and One are upset, but you don't get the opinion that they're like fully upset almost. And as the series progresses, when you see more humanoid denizens, such as Lake and Hazel, you start believing that they're the exception because of such and such reason, being Tulip's mirror or being a creation that's meant to be very humanoid. You start to agree almost with the Apex a little bit and wondering, how human are these people? But the Castle Car shows just how human these people are, that they are actually deeply affected by the passengers coming and leaving, that they aren't just there to help, they do have their own feelings themselves, and they do have their own problems, which is a great theme in book 4, because previously most of the conflicts have been between with passengers and denizens, or with Lake and denizens, but this time it's all just denizens and denizens. The whole thing is just Kez getting into problems with other denizens or Ryan and Min-gi's issues. So it goes a long way in explaining what the denizens feel, and also seeing Jeremy's backstory and how he was in the castle to heal, but Morgan just wanted him to stay there with her, even to his own detriment. And then we realized that Kez did have a home, but she was kicked out of this home almost for trying to help someone because Morgan wasn't able to handle it. But that's almost fair because Morgan feels like a tool that denizens keep using, which isn't an inaccurate feeling because she kind of is, at least according to a lot of the other characters in the series. It's just great. And the music is perfect as well. And number 1 is the campfire car, which is Tuba's funeral. Grace participates even knowing that she is part of the problem that got Tuba killed. The scene where they sit up in the tree branch and Hazel sings Tuba's songs while Grace cries, even though she's never felt bad for harming a denizen in the past, is perfect. And I can't explain how much that episode makes me cry every time. I think a lot of people would agree that it's probably the best episode in Infinity Train, so I don't really need to say more about it. Just watch Infinity Train and you'll see what I mean. So, if you ask me what my favorite book of Infinity Train is, I don't really have an answer, and I don't know what my least favorite book is either. They're all so good in their own special ways. Book 1 really does a lot of good setup and explains why Tulip is on the train and how to get off the train. Book 2 does an amazing job with MT's struggle to be seen as a person, while at the same time making Jessie a very likable character and having a great climax. Book 3 does a great job at getting us to like Grace and Simon, and then hate Simon, and then sympathize with Grace, and it has some of the best emotional scenes of the series. And Book 4 is just plain enjoyable. I love Ryan and Min-gi. I love how their relationship progresses throughout the season. I absolutely adore the castle car and the interactions that denizens have with each other in the season. So all of the books are great, and I think a lot of it comes down to personal experiences with what resonates with you more. I know book 1 resonates with me a lot because of what I've gone through with my parents' divorce and remarriages, and how I also altered some of my memories to make things that probably weren't that great seem great, and Infinity Train book 1 helped me realize that more, and that I wasn't being entirely fair to my parents with what I was doing. And that's what I think is brilliant about Infinity Train. The world is great, the setting is great, and the plot is great, but at the core, it's just a really good story about people figuring out their issues, and it helps the audience figure out their own issues as well. So if you haven't seen Infinity Train, watch it.